Walt Disney is known as one of the most brilliant creative minds ever. He changed the face of movies and had a massive hand in creating animation. Without him, our childhoods would have been completely different. He is as famous as you could get. Still, there are a few facts about him that you might not have known. Some will shock you. There are the shocking details about his mom's death, and a lot more. First, the massive gift. When someone gives you a gift and it is shares in some obscure company, then it doesn't sound like the most useful or thoughtful gift ever. I mean, there was a time when some tech companies lured their workers by promising stock, and then it was pretty much useless. But what if that company is Disney and the giver is Walt Disney? Then the picture changes quite a bit. He had a housekeeper called Thelma Howard that worked for him from the early 50s and stayed with the family for more than 30 years. During that time, she became like family, and for Christmas and birthday gifts, Walt Disney gave her shares in Disney Studios. She also reportedly bought some more each time that she could. Those stocks became pretty valuable, and when she died, her estate was worth over $9 million. It was split between her son and a foundation created to help underprivileged children. Those gifts that Disney gave were pretty great, and it has since helped many other people. The shocking events of his mother's death. This has to be one of the most horrible events in Walt Disney's life. He was reportedly very grateful for everything that his parents did for him while he was growing up. So when the studio started to become successful, he wanted to share the wealth. Walt and his brother Roy bought their parents a home in Los Angeles for their 50th anniversary. That was in 1937, and then about a year later, Walt's mother told him about a strange smell coming from the furnace, and he sent some repairmen over, but they missed an issue and the house was left with a gas leak. One day, both of his parents collapsed in their home. Their housekeeper found them and, with the help of neighbors, dragged both Flora and Elias out into the yard. Elias survived, but sadly, Flora did not make it, and she died from carbon monoxide poisoning. Walt never spoke about her death publicly, but reports say that he blamed himself, since he was the one that bought the house and who sent the repairman that didn't fix the problem. In the end, it is really a sad tragedy, but many believe it is one of the reasons why so many Disney characters don't have mothers. Next, Disney did not draw Mickey. Disney is the creator of some of the biggest animated characters in the world, but his signature character, Mickey Mouse, was not actually drawn by Walt. At the time, Disney was partnered with the incredible animator Ub Iwerks. Walt was the one to sketch some of the original plans for Mickey and his personality, but it was Iwerks that drew the final design and sketched the first animated short with the famous mouse. But even though he was supposed to be a partner, he was never really given a lot of credit for Mickey's creation, and this pushed him to leave Disney and start his own animation company. Sadly, the company could not compete against Disney and it went under. He went back to Disney and worked there creating special visual effects and technology that would later help in the creation of some of our favorite movies. Many of his creations are still used in films and in the Disney parks around the world. But even now, people still don't think about Ub when talking about Mickey Mouse. It is Walt Disney all the way. But there was one way that Walt was really close to the mouse: voice of Mickey Mouse. He might not have done the original sketches of Mickey Mouse, but shockingly, he was the first voice of Mickey. He voiced the very first voiced Mickey Mouse, where his only line was, "Hot dog, hot dog." He then went on to do the voice of Mickey Mouse for at least 100 short films. But right about then, Walt Disney started to become seriously busy, and he didn't have loads of time to do other projects. It was time to hand over the voice to someone else. The voice of Mickey had a pretty great history since then too. One of the voices that came after Walt, Anthony Allwine, met his future wife thanks to the role. She was Russie Taylor, and she voiced Minnie Mouse, Mickey's true love. How sweet is that? What happened after his death? This is one of the weirder parts of Walt Disney's life, or I should say his death, since there were a lot of rumors about what happened after he died. Right after his death, someone started a rumor that he had his body, or even just his head, cryogenically frozen right after death in hopes that he could be brought back to life someday. Even now, there are still rumors about this floating around, but his daughters have stated that it was all false and that he was cremated. In fact, it was only after his death that the first cryogenics tests started. It might not make for such an interesting story as him being frozen, but that is the truth. What is the first thing or movie you think of when you hear Walt Disney? Let us know in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. Next up, we will check out even more shocking things you might not know about Walt Disney, how he proved everyone wrong with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, his magical apartment, and a whole lot more. And now, Disney's Folly. It was all fun while Walt Disney was making animated short films, but then he wanted to make an 80-minute animated feature film called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Ever heard of it? Yes, it turned out to be a pretty pretty big hit and completely changed animation. But back when he was starting to develop the movie, people in Hollywood were pretty skeptical. They even called it Disney's folly behind his back. No one believed that the project was going to work, and even those in the company were worried. He ended up doing a one-man show explaining the entire movie to them, and it helped his team get behind him. The movie was a massive hit despite all of the skepticism. Disney even got a special Academy Award for the movie to celebrate his genius. They gave him 1 regular Oscar and 7 dwarf-sized miniature Oscars. It was special and quite the answer to everyone who doubted Walt Disney and his vision. His apartment in the happiest place on Earth. When Disneyland was being built in California, Walt really wanted his own piece of the happiest place on Earth, where he could enjoy the energy and fun of the park without being swarmed by loads of fans who wanted to get some of his time. And that is why he built himself a hidden private apartment right on Main Street, USA, above this fire station. It is pretty small, less than 500 square feet, but it gave him the opportunity to look at the visitors of the park. He was there when the gates opened the first time. He could watch everyone flood through the gates and see his dream coming true in front of his very eyes. It must have been really special, and later he used the apartment to work in. It was a really private place for Walt and his family, and there aren't a lot of photos inside the apartment. It even had a fire pole, but then a child tried to climb up it to meet Walt and they sealed it shut. Even now, the apartment is kept almost exactly the same. The park even leaves the light on in the window to symbolize that Walt's spirit remains there. Except when his daughters visited the park, they then shut off the light to show respect for their grief. Sad and sweet at the same time. Finally, his famous last words. Just like with what happened to Walt Disney after his death, there have been a number of rumors about his last words. Rumors go that while he was suffering from lung cancer and just before his death, that he wrote the name Kurt Russell on a piece of paper and that he never wrote another word. They even say that it was effectively his last words. But in reality, it was one of the last things he wrote on a piece of paper. But there were a few other names on the same list. Russell was a child actor under contract with Disney Studio at the time, and it is likely that Walt wrote it down just to come back to it later. Sadly, he was taken to hospital not long after, and he died before explaining. So it could have been one of the last things he wrote, but possibly not the very last thing, and not his last words before his death. But still, no one really knows what he was thinking when he penned the note, and he could have had something brilliant that we missed out on. Do you have any other facts to add? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.